Baxy's Musical Podcast.
Resistance is useless!
Every song that's ever been created during the entire history of music, regardless of who it was recorded by, shares one thing in common. Somebody, at some point, had to write it all down. Obvious? Who's to say? But honestly, how much time do you think about the work that went into your favorite songs? Probably not that much. But somebody had to be inspired by something. Somebody had to create something to surround that inspiration and turn nothing into something. In this case, 16 albums jammed with some of the best songs of all time. Sometimes a song is well written, sometimes it's not. And then occasionally somebody will come around with the ability to write music at such an elevated level that they find themselves often being compared to some of the greatest songwriters of all time. Burt Bacharach, Brian Wilson, the Beatles, and those are just the Bs. Throughout much of their career, Chris Difford and Glenn Tilbrook from the band Squeeze were writing songs that were so great that they were often being compared favorably to John Lennon and Paul McCartney. And those guys did okay for themselves. For some, though, the comparison is totally unfair. But for others, even the Beatles would have a hard time squaring up lyrically with the likes of Chris Difford. Their songs told stories. Sometimes those stories were personal and heartfelt. Other times, they wrote songs that were visual and far more sophisticated than the normal stuff that was being released during the new wave era of the early 1980s. They weren't just writing songs about being too shy or Mexican radios or about some guy named Mickey. They were writing about real stuff. Between the melodies that were perfectly written by Glenn Tilbrook to support Chris Difford's poetic vision in the lyrics, to the band including Jules Holland, then Paul Carrack, to the shamefully underappreciated drumming of Gilson Lavis, Squeeze completely defied the new wave label. They were just a great freaking band. From their classic songs like Up the Junction, Slap and Tickle, Another Nail in My Heart, Black Coffee in Bed, and their classic Tempted, and dozens more, they probably should have been a hell of a lot bigger than they were here in the United States. But for those of us who were fans, the music of Difford and Tilbrook was and continues to be timeless. This is my conversation with Glenn Tilbrook of Squeeze on Baxy's Musical Podcast.
Hey, is that Mike?
Yes. How you doing, Glenn? Good to talk to you.
I'm good. How are you?
I'm okay. It sounds like you had a hell of a trip, huh?
Oh, yeah. Look, honestly, I've just been to Amsterdam. I just got back, and literally, and here we are. So I'm back in London for a few days before I come out to a wonderful country.
So I was looking on the Squeeze's website, looking at the schedule of shows you guys have got between the headlining shows you guys are doing to the tour you're also simultaneously doing with Hall & Oates. It's almost like a relentless schedule for you guys.
It's pretty intense, but you know what? It keeps us happy and it keeps us interested. You know, and we've got such a great band now, and the band just feels like it's getting better and better and better. We're all really having a good time, and I think that communicates itself to the audiences that we've had. Like the shows we've had in the last year have been some of the best shows we've ever had, and that's such a great position.
Really? So, you guys you and Chris at least have been together for, I think it's 47 years, if I'm not mistaken.
You're right.
To have a partnership that lasts that long, obviously it takes a certain level of chemistry between the two of you, but to sustain it after like so many stops and starts, how has that chemistry changed over the years for you two?
Well, I think that we will be like any long-term partnership in that we appreciate, what's good between us. We appreciate the chemistry that we have together, and we appreciate what happens when we get down to work. That's a really good thing. We don't live in each other's pockets at all, and we have very different and separate lives, I guess. But when it comes together, when we come together, it's great, and it's undeniable to both of us.
Yeah, the way you guys write has often been compared to the Beatles and Lennon and McCartney. I would imagine when you hear that, it must feel very uncomfortable to hear that kind of comparison. Is it, or is it something you embrace and take as a major compliment?
It's something, actually, really, I don't think about it at all. But when people mention it, it's flattering now. I don't take it seriously. They were different writers to us, but we have that partnership thing, and we do have a chemistry, and it's amazing that it's lasted this long, really.
So, Chris Difford has been writing the lyrics for you guys forever, and to me, there are very few people that could go toe to toe with his talent and the way he's able to not only create a story, but the imagery that he puts into every lyric, I think, is pretty amazing. But what really I think is fascinating is, here you are, you're taking words on a page, and somehow through, I don't know if it's some sort of divine intervention or what it is, you're basically taking these words and turning it into something that's artistically accessible for people. I think it's a remarkable talent to do that. When you get his lyrics, when you get it on a page, does the song come naturally, or is it sometimes real difficult work to make this into something else?
I wish I had the answer to that, because it happens in so many different ways. Like my favorite way is when you look at a lyric and start singing a tune, and it happens to be the right tune. I've written songs that take as long as it takes to sing them,
Right.
Literally in 3 minutes. And some of them have been great. On the other hand, I've worked at months on some songs, and they've turned out great as well. Tempted took me a long time to write. And I've never been discouraged by that. I was like, you have to feel, it's like feeling your way around in a dark room. You know what's right at the end, but when you're getting there, you're going to bump your head a few times.
Tempted was a very different song for you guys. Never mind the fact that Paul Carrack sang that song, but even the sound of that song was very, very different from the stuff that came before. When you say it was a difficult song, were you trying to do something very, very different with those lyrics, or is it just the way it worked out?
No, I thought it was a brilliant lyric, and I didn't want to let it down. My job is to convey the words, really, as well as I can.
Yeah.
And the way that I wrote the song, it was more poppy than it turned out on the record. I've often thought, and I do believe, that you write a song in a certain way, it's not always going to be the way that it should end up. Tempted went through. In fact, we recorded a version with Dave Edmunds at first. It was much poppier, and I'm so glad that version didn't come out. It's the same song, but people wouldn't be talking about it in the way they talk about it now if it had been that.
I was watching this documentary on the BBC. It was on YouTube about the band, and it was really, really very, very, very well done. But when you guys came out with that song and Elvis Costello was producing it, and someone suggested, it may have even been him, to suggest that Paul Carrack sang it, you mentioned that it was disappointing to you because you really wanted to sing it yourself. But that decision, it sounded like once it was made and once you heard Paul sing it, it just became very clear that's the way it should have been done.
Oh, it's undeniable, completely, absolutely. So, it was a brilliant call. It was the right call. I guess I was hurt at the time, but not when I heard how great it sounded.
Yeah. So
it was brilliant.
So when you're working with a guy like Elvis Costello, how much does that differ from when you were working with John Cale during the first record?
I think that Elvis Costello had the whole band's full attention. I think everyone respected him, and that makes his job easier. Although this is not to say he did great work on it. He did great work on the record, but the whole band were behind him. So he wanted to do it very quickly, and that's what we did. So it really is the sound of how we sounded at the time, that record. And I'm very proud of it.
And when you had John Cale, and see, to me, when I saw, on the record when I first got it that John Cale had produced it, it seemed, well, I can understand being a fan of John Cale and Velvet Underground and his solo work and some of the things he did. It seemed to be kind of a weird mix that John Cale would have taken on Squeeze. That's something that it had such a pop bent to that music. Was it that awkward to be working with a guy with that kind of sensibility?
Well, honestly, I love John Cale, and he did a great job, but he didn't really do a Squeeze record. I don't think he liked what we were doing at the time, so we wrote the songs to order for him, and so it doesn't really sound like a Squeeze record to me. It's a hybrid record,
right?
That no one would really claim as their own, we were still, in my mind, we were a pop band. So, we did Take Me I'm Yours without John, and that was a track that, got pulled as a single. So I think that really shone the way forward for us. And Call for Cats, which was our second record, actually was more like our first record might have been.
I saw you guys play, this goes... I'm trying to remember whether it was 1985 or 1987. It was somewhere around there. And the thing that there were two things that I walked away from that show not realizing about the band. And one of them was how great of a guitar player you were, because I don't think the studio albums quite reflect how really talented you are at playing. The songwriting, the singing, that's obvious. But the guitar playing, I think, is something that I don't think enough people realize the level that you're playing.
Yeah, I was always a bit shy about playing guitar, so I didn't do it very often. I play a lot more now.
Yeah,
I'm not shy anymore.
You don't. You don't have to be shy, Glenn. You could outplay nearly anybody.
No, I really enjoy playing guitar. It's one of the things I love to do the most. And, I'm doing it more now with Squeeze. It's great. It feels so great.
The other thing that I noticed when I saw you guys is, and I play drums badly, but I've been playing for forever, is watching Gilson Levis play. I always thought he was maybe one of the most underrated and underappreciated drummers, maybe of all time. I think he was amazing.
Yeah, he's so he's such an inventive drummer, really. You think of some of the songs that we did, it would never sound the same. I think, in a weird way, he doesn't play like Keith Moon, but he occupies a similar space to Keith Moon. So many of the songs, if they just had a standard drum beat, would not be the same.
I totally agree. There's a feel in which he's playing a lot, but it never overshadows the song, and I think that's something that not every drummer in the world quite embraces or understands, and clearly that guy had it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, totally.
You talked about some of the songs that you guys have written. I'm sure you've been asked a million questions about Tempted and Up the Junction and a couple others. But there are some songs that from the band that I've always loved that probably you don't get asked about very often. I've always loved the song When the Hangover Strikes from from a Stranger. I just think that's such a beautifully done song.
Oh, thank you. That's one of my favorites. I'm very proud of that. And I
think part of what I love about it is the tone of your voice in that song is maybe more soulful than it had been in previous records. But it's such a great lounge music type of song. But it's overlooked, and I think it's a classic.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm very proud of that record. And it's unlike anything Squeeze did before or since.
Another one that I love, and this is probably surprising, but I think if there was a song that probably got people to think, so there's where the comparison between Lennon and McCartney might be, is the song F-Hole. I love the song F-Hole. For a lot of reasons, but wow. the title alone gets your attention. But I think the melody of that song is really pretty remarkable, considering what people may know of the band. It's very, very different.
Yes, thank you. That really was. It sounds like sort of Syd Barrett, Pink Floyd type melody to me now. I can't, I honestly can't remember what on earth I was thinking when when it happened, but it was quite psychedelic. Although I wasn't a psychedelic person myself.
Right. So, here you are. It's 47 years later. You guys are touring all over the place, but your career has seen a lot of changes, not just within the band and with you guys individually, but the business of music has changed remarkably too. CDs are not being sold. Yeah. Vinyl is coming back, but it's not driving everything. And you have downloads, which really have taken over a lot of music. How has it affected you guys as performers and songwriters today as opposed to before?
Well, as performers, there's been a weird upturn in the amount of people coming to see us that's happened in the last few years, and it's continuing to grow. So, I don't know quite what to ascribe to that. Is it playlisting? I know, for instance, all my kids, of course, are aware of Squeeze and what I do, but what they say is about their friends discovering the band independently of them and the knowledge of that I'm their dad, and that's a weird thing. You have all this music available now at the touch of a button. You can get access to everything, and what that does to a generation, I think, is just to throw things completely open. You can find stuff. I remember when I discovered early rock and roll music through, when the film American Graffiti came out. I was 15. It had a tremendous impact on me. Some of the songs are 15, 20 years old at the time, but it didn't matter. To me, it was fresh and new and exciting. And, so I can imagine that we may be the same thing to some kids who discover us for the first time. I can't really say, but that's what I think it is.
The thing that I find interesting is when I've talked to other musicians, their ability to make a living becomes compromised a little bit by the digital part of music distribution now. Record companies are not in the same kind of business they were 20, 30 years ago. And now it's just a very different reality where some bands almost have to play or have to market or merchandise themselves. Do you find that to be true of you guys even after all this time? For me, this is an old thing because I think from the mid-90s onwards, I thought the record business is sort of over. That's how it felt to me, and I thought the only way to go about business then was to just leave it. I didn't stop making records, but I thought I'll make records for myself. There'll be small things. I'm not going to get anywhere near the charts or anything like that. Stop thinking about that. Just do it for your fans. Yeah.
And we've sort of been, to one degree or another, in that same mode ever since. Unless you're connected with a movie or a TV series or something like that, something that will propel you in front of people, it's very hard to get people to discover your stuff. So you have to just plod away at it, keep on going, hope for the best, but don't lose heart. There's a lot of excitement, and things have always changed. The record business was but a fleeting thing in the scale of time. It's now, music is not the driver that it once was.
Yeah,
and it's just changed. It's accept the change. We're a better band than we ever were, so we're carrying on. Nothing's going to stop us. I want
to ask you about one more song that is my favorite, and it is not a Squeeze song, but it is one that you are a part of, and it's with Elvis Costello, "A Whisper to a Scream" from the Trust album. That's another song that I wish more people knew it, because it almost sounds like a song that picks up like in the middle of the song, and I think it's one of the best that either one of you guys have done.
I love that song. I love that song. What happened was we were recording in the same studio, Elvis and Squeeze, next door to each other, and Elvis had a cold. So he got me to come in and sing for the backing tracks, So that was For a Whisper to a Scream. And then liked what I did so much that he had me come back in the next week. He said, let's do it as a duet. I'll take the first half of the verse, you take the second half. Rolled the tape, we sang it, I think, twice, and that was it. We got it. It was magic. It was such a magical session.
It's one of those songs that I don't think either one of you get enough credit for. It should have been an absolute classic. It is to me. It's like I said, it is certainly one of my favorites.
Cool. Thank you to Elvis for writing it.
Oh, yeah. Listen, I'm here to make you feel better, Glenn. That's my sole purpose here. Listen, it's a real pleasure to talk to you. I'm looking forward to your show in Northampton on the 24th. Got my tickets. Very excited to be there. Glenn Tilbrook, it is a real pleasure to talk to you, and thank you so much for joining us.
Honestly, it's been a real pleasure also. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely.
Really appreciate it. Bye.
Take care,
Cheers,
Glenn.
Mike.
Thank you very much.
And there you go. Glenn Tilbrook of Squeeze. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, like it, share it, tell all your friends about it. You can reach me at bags@rock102.com. I'd love to hear what you think. You can follow along on Facebook, Instagram, and Spotify. And thanks for listening to Bagsy's Musical Podcast.